My name is Marcia Henderson. I'm a member of the Healthy Women Board. And for over 20 years, I was at FDA and retired in 2019 as the Associate Commissioner for Women's Health. My former office at FDA promoted and tracked the increases of women and minorities in clinical trials. And I'm pleased to say that in 2018, the average percentage of women in drug trials rose to 56%, and an amazing 72% by the end of 2019. So change really can happen, and I'm proud to say that I've been part of it. However, our challenges continue. COVID-19 has been the greatest one of our lifetimes. 200,000 deaths and countless people with chronic health conditions. It's really horrifying. We anticipate that sound science and innovation will save us. But until then, we must socially distance, wash our hands, and please, please wear masks because they do save lives. As your moderator today, I'm delighted to introduce our esteemed speakers and panelists. We are now joined by Dr. Lotus Malbras, Vice President, Chief Development Officer, Global Clinical Development Immunology, Eli Lilly and Company. Professor Sabra Klein, Molecular Microbiology and Immunology, Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Dr. Megan Hall, Senior Director of Medical Communications and Medical Affairs, Braille. Amber Bynum, Head Operations, Walmart Health. What an interesting and diverse group of women representing various facets of health. We will hear from each speaker and then host a panel, and you will all be invited and given the opportunity to ask questions in the chat feature on your screen. So now let us welcome Dr. Malbras to the stage and hear what Lilly has underway. Dr. Malbras.
Thank you very much, Marcia. So hello, everyone. My name is Lotus Malbras, and I'm the Vice President and Global Head of Immunology Product Development at Eli Lilly and Company. In my role, I oversee some of the latest medicines and clinical trials in treatment for immunology and autoimmune diseases and conditions. These are such as psoriasis, one of the most common diseases that we have, psoriatic arthritis, atopic dermatitis, rheumatoid arthritis, and many more. I lead a team in developing treatments and education to help patients across the globe. I'm inspired every day by the research our team is doing, and each team member's drive and commitment to our patients. I'm thrilled to be a part of this year's Healthy Women's event, and it is great to be able to connect virtually with you all. You are our next generation of female trailblazers, and I hope today you will feel even more inspired to go forth and be your best. The remarkable women that participate in today's event will showcase innovative science, clinical work, and advocacy in healthcare. You will hear about the trends influencing women's health, both today, but most importantly, the future of healthcare. I'm passionate about innovation in healthcare, and the most thing that I'm passionate about is solving problems for patients. It is what has inspired me early on in my career. And I always wanted to help people, and I wanted to be a doctor to help people. And I wanted to be a sort of doctor that who gives her all each day, serving and helping people. At Lilly, we always focus on enhancing the patient's care and the experience that they have, both with our medications, but also with the healthcare. What I have learned through my career and something that Lilly encourages is that if you put your patients at your top priority, everyone wins. And when we say we keep patients our top priority, one of the most important aspects is that we know we must then be focused on listening to and understanding and acting upon people's individual's needs. As you know, patient care is both an art and a science, and it is not that one size fits all. Our extensive research and academic partnership give us the ability to tap into new, exciting biologic targets. We are also experimenting with new tools for drug discovery and using new technology to come up with better agents to target specific pathways. And while we are excited about these research developments, we are keenly aware that none of it happens without the right teams in place to lead the efforts. Isn't it this something always the case that if we want to elevate the standard of care for our patients, we need to also ensure that we are forming smart, diverse, and inclusive teams to do so. I hope today you leave here inspired to actively contribute to creating a thriving workforce where you are now, and to look for ways to make a more significant contribution to tomorrow. I also hope you leave here today with an understanding that an unconventional career path, it's not only okay, but in fact, it can stimulate you and stimulate innovation. As I mentioned earlier, in the first 10 years of my career, I was a physician and researcher. My experience living in Europe and practicing medicine shaped me to be the leader that I'm today. I have been fortunate enough to work alongside culturally diverse individuals. And when I made my decision to switch from practicing medicine to working for a pharmaceutical company, it was a really big change. I knew that this was the right decision for me when one of my colleagues called to tell me that how much value I was bringing to the dermatology community in the pharmaceutical space that I was working. In fact, I remember that he told me that we need more people with medical degrees and medical backgrounds who can bring outside in and the inside out from their company. And the question is, how will you do this? How you will bring outside in and take the inside out? And since we are on the subject of bringing it, this is a good moment and time for me to tell you that I'm known for saying, bring others along. Bring others along on your journey. Reach back and help the person behind you take the next steps. I would like to pivot for a moment and pick up on the topic of fostering diversity with healthcare. Did you know that minorities make up nearly 40%, 40% of the United States population, but account for less than 20%? Less than 20% of participants in clinical trials, which lead to approval of our new medicines. This is a really bad number, and this is what we have a problem. Diversity in clinical trials is incredibly important, and it's not only to ensure new medicines are effective and safe for all population, but also because responses to medicines can vary depending on many, many factors, including someone's genetic background and gender, ethnicity, and pre-existing conditions. We can do better. And in Lilly recognize that there are populations that have been historically underrepresented in past clinical trials. So one of the items that we do, we try continuously to evaluate treatment expectations and burden of disease for patients and work to ensure our clinical trials have a representative of the population and all communities in America. At Lilly, we have a clinical trial diversity strategy. And what we do, we begin by locating trial sites closer to patients' home, using virtual visits and collecting less but strategic data, which is more important in the end for the patients. And we are seeing early successes. Diversity in our trials help us to create more effective products. And isn't it why we are here? And speaking of creating more effective products, it just wouldn't be sane at this conference of innovations to not talk about what we are doing to help find solution for the worldwide problem of COVID that we are challenging today. So let me share some exciting developments. In February, an artificial intelligence platform based in UK submitted a letter to Lancet. And that paper identified our drug baricitinib as a potential intervention for treatment of COVID-19 and prompts the interest in exploring this hypothesis further. So Lilly entered into an agreement with National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease to further study baricitinib. Our trial evaluated the safety and efficacy of treatment regimens of the interventional antiviral remdesivir plus baricitinib and just remdesivir with placebo. In addition, Lilly also have another clinical trial, phase 3 randomized trial, that supports the efficacy and safety of baricitinib versus placebo only in hospitalized patients with COVID-19. We're very excited about baricitinib's potential as COVID-19 treatment. You know, it is remarkable how quickly we activated these trials for COVID-19. And this just doesn't happen. I'm convinced that it is because the individuals making up the teams have seen the power of diverse people working together collectively and helping each other do what we do best. I hope I left you with a renewed focus on the power of diversity and inclusion, and this event today inspires you to be a trailblazer for innovation. It is an honor to be here today with such an impressive lineup of speakers. Marsha, I will turn back to you to introduce them. Thank you.
And now we have Dr. Sabra Klein from Hopkins.
Oh, Marcia, thank you. And Lotus, thank you for starting us off in such a beautiful way, focusing on diversity and hitting on COVID-19. So I am a professor of molecular microbiology and immunology at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. I'm also co-director of the Johns Hopkins Center for Women's Health, Sex and Gender Research. I work with infectious diseases, and that includes not only COVID-19, but also influenza and even Zika viruses. And one thing that many of you in the audience today may not know is that women are often better protected against infectious diseases than men, in particular those caused by viruses. We tend to clear viruses faster. We tend to recover from these viral infections faster than our male counterparts. This is in part caused by the fact that women generally have greater immune responses than do men. And as Lotus mentioned in some of her early remarks about autoimmune diseases, it does contribute to some degree to the greater autoimmunity that we see in women as compared with men. But on the other side of that coin, we find that women are better protected against infectious diseases. And we're seeing this play out on a world scale right now with the COVID-19 pandemic. Worldwide, we are finding that men are about twice as likely to be hospitalized with severe COVID-19 and to die. It's going to take treatments like we're just discussed to change that. But that's what the epidemiological data are showing us today. And we've seen this in other pandemics as well as epidemics, where men tend to not do as well as women. The one caveat to this is pregnancy, a female-specific reproductive time when our immune system is altered in part to allow us to support a healthy pregnancy. Allow us to accept this partially foreign fetus. So the very responses that are important for protecting our fetus are also the very responses that lead to increased susceptibility to infectious diseases. We saw that play out during the Zika virus epidemic a few years past. We're monitoring this carefully right now during COVID-19 and seeing some evidence of increased susceptibility to more severe outcomes among pregnant women. The CDC just put out a report this week pertaining to this. But where we really need to be thinking about how we protect ourselves against infectious diseases, I'm going to give us two examples. The first public health message that I have, avoidance is your best strategy. As Marcia said, wear your mask, socially distance yourself, wash your hands. It turns out that men are significantly less likely, in fact, 2 times less likely to wear masks based on observational research in New York City. Men are also significantly less likely to wash their hands, and when washing their hands, are significantly less likely to use soap. So to all of us, let's remind the men in the room, the men in our lives, that avoidance is a very important public health procedure that we can engage in an effort to protect ourselves, protect our families, protect our neighbors from COVID-19. After avoidance, our best protection is vaccination. And so I do a lot of research on vaccination. Women tend to mount greater immune responses to vaccines than men. I've studied this most closely in the context of the influenza vaccines, which we should be receiving annually. And the flu shot, which is the intramuscular injection that we get in our arm, available right now, it works better in women. Women often mount greater immune responses. And in studies that have followed women and men, they have shown that breakthrough cases of flu are less likely to occur in women than in men. As you can imagine, there are some age-associated factors that go into this, and I'll make mention of that. But when a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine is made available, you should get it. It will be safe and it will protect you. Early data from a phase 2 clinical trial in China suggests that women mount greater antibody responses to the vaccine. But what is never considered is that the dosing or the formulation of these vaccines may need to account for the sex of the participant. So why do women mount greater immune responses? Well, we're in the process of uncovering this now. But early data from my group and others show that having a double dosage of the X chromosome is in fact involved. So those genetic differences that Lotus mentioned are absolutely important in the responses to our vaccines. Having two X chromosomes, which is what females have, males on the other hand have an X and a Y chromosome, and the X chromosome is about 10 times bigger than the Y chromosome, having roughly 10 times as many genes encoded on the X chromosome as compared with the Y. And for reasons that are still not clear, the X chromosome is enriched for genes that are very important for our immune responses. The sex chromosomes are also very important and make a fundamental contribution to the development of our reproductive tissues. So the ovaries in females, the testes in males, and the hormones that they secrete. And we have shown that estrogens boost immunity to vaccines, especially against flu, whereas testosterone seems to reduce or repress those very immune responses. As you can imagine, we know our hormone concentrations change over the life course as we age. Our immunity does as well. And our group has shown that the decline in immunity that occurs with advancing age is more dramatic in females and is tied to our hormonal profiles. So I really want to end with posing a question that I think many of the participants are going to be interested in addressing. Should we be treated differently in order to be protected equally? Thank you. Marcia, I give it back.
Next speaker will be Dr. Megan Hall-Grail.
Great. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's a real honor to be on the panel, and I'm very excited to discuss recent advances, specifically in cancer screening, particularly in light of the global pandemic, which Marcia has alluded to, and Lotus and Sabra also discussed. So my name is Megan Hall. I have the unique opportunity to work at a company called GRAIL that is dedicated to detecting cancer early when it can be cured. I lead a team that ensures that our data is published and that we educate on cancer diagnosis and cancer control, as well as on our technology. So GRAIL is developing a multi-cancer early detection test called Gallery that uses a simple blood draw to simultaneously detect just about any cancer and can predict the location of that cancer with high accuracy to direct the next steps in confirming the diagnosis. So we already have great screening programs for cancers, right? Like mammography for breast cancer, but there are a lot of cancers that don't have screening tests at all. To frame how that can really impact public health, let me put this into context with current events. Now, Marcia already noted in her wonderful intro that as of today, there were about 200,000 deaths due to COVID in the United States alone. And so it should be pretty clear at this point that this is a bona fide public health crisis. And it's pretty clear that there is a need for easy to implement testing that could reach a large number of people. So I would argue that there's another longstanding public health crisis that is expected to kill 3 times that many people in the United States this year alone, and that public health crisis is cancer. And in the COVID pandemic, public health experts are rightly worried about a really sharp decline in cancer screenings. There's been more than a 60% drop in screening for breast, cervical, and colon cancer. And the National Cancer Institute estimates that this will result in upwards of 10,000 more deaths from breast and colorectal cancer over the next decade. And that's just for 2 cancer types. And so people with cancer and other conditions aren't getting in for treatment during this pandemic. And if patients with cancer aren't getting in for treatment, then we can be pretty sure that people without symptoms are certainly not getting in for routine screening. And so I think this is where there's a real opportunity to improve on the healthcare front. And so it hopefully should be clear that as with COVID, there is a need for easy to implement cancer screening that could readily reach a large number of people and detect a large number of cancers. So there's no real argument at this point that early cancer detection saves lives, and current screening programs like mammography improve survival by diagnosing cancer at earlier stages. And if we look at breast cancer specifically, the 5-year survival rate is about 99% when that cancer is diagnosed at an early stage when the cancer is still localized. That drops to 27% when the cancer is diagnosed after it has spread at very late stages. And I think probably everyone here either has been or will be touched by cancer at some point in their lives. For me personally, both my grandmother and my aunt were diagnosed with and thankfully successfully treated for breast cancer after detection through routine mammography. But what if we hadn't had that test? And therein lies the problem. The existing tests really only target a handful of cancer types. And what this means is that about 60% of all of the diagnosed cancers, including really deadly cancers like ovarian cancer, don't have any kind of screening test at all. And so these cancers are often detected after the cancer has spread and when symptoms have likely appeared. And that's when survival can be really low. About 3/4 of cancer deaths are in these cancers like ovarian cancer that don't have a recommended screening test at all. So we have no way to detect them until it's often too late. So what if we could extend the benefits of these single cancer screens like mammography to any kind of cancer to reach more people and save more lives? And this, as I mentioned earlier, is what GRAIL is developing, this simple multi-cancer blood test that will tell you whether cancer is present, and if so, will predict where that cancer is in the body. So this test is being developed in an extremely large clinical study program, which will include over 145,000 participants. And Lotus alluded to some enrollment differences or mentioned specifically some enrollment differences that can occur with clinical trials where women and minorities can be underrepresented. GRAIL has one trial that includes 100,000 women specifically undergoing their screening mammography. So I think we have some really good representation in our studies. And importantly, I want to highlight that the test that we're developing is really meant to complement existing screenings and not to replace. And this way, we hope that it will extend the benefits of early detection to cancers that currently don't have screening tests at all. We believe that using this test in conjunction with the 5 existing recommended screening tests could potentially avert up to 75% of deaths in cancers that have really low 5-year survival. And I think particularly for this audience, it's important to think of the potential benefits beyond the patient. We know that women often play a role as healthcare decision makers and caregivers in their families. So earlier detection could also allow time for things like financial planning and coordinating caregiving responsibilities, making school or work arrangements, for example. So the good news is that many of the existing screening tests are now back online, and it's critical that everybody gets back in for their routine screenings because, as we know, early cancer detection saves lives. And at GRAIL, our mission is really to extend these benefits to more people and more cancers so that together we can detect cancer early when it can be cured. Thank you very much. It's really an honor to speak on this panel, and I will now turn it back over to Marcia and I believe Amber. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. So our final speaker will be Amber from Walmart. Amber Bynum, thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. I'm really honored to be here today and glad to be amongst these incredible leaders here on this panel. And I appreciate all of your messages and this is such a different time for us that we live in. And it's interesting, my role at Walmart currently, I lead Walmart Health operations, work through our operations team, and then also helping develop out the strategy for what we're doing at Walmart to impact healthcare. We feel like more than ever right now with COVID, it really reinforces the vulnerabilities that our healthcare system is really facing and underscoring just how important it really is to improve that access to healthcare. So Megan, what you're speaking about with cancer screenings and just people getting in and actually getting those preventative checkups, it's more important that we are actually on the front lines and providing those services. And that's our focus at Walmart. What we're seeing and what we've heard loud and clear is, according to our U.S. survey of customers conducted by our insights team, is cost is one of the top barriers to healthcare for 43% of our Walmart shoppers, followed by the convenience piece of 27%, and then access, which is 22%. And additionally, 40% of those Walmart customers, they're surveyed, they've delayed medical care. And this is even prior to COVID. So we know that the access piece is probably more prevalent than it ever has been ever before. When I think about why I'm here today and speaking before you is my father was diagnosed with cancer when I was 7 years old. And I watched my mother be that caregiver and be that decision maker when it came to his healthcare and for all of us. And we lost health insurance at a young age. And I was a kid that went from doctor's office to doctor's office. And I remember an impact that the pharmacist made on my life and my mother's life to make it a little bit easier through that journey. And so I went to pharmacy school. I have a doctor of pharmacy from the UAMS Medical Sciences and started working with Walmart about 9 years ago in the pharmacy division, and immediately just loved the mission that Walmart had to help patients and customers save money so that they could live better. And not just in the retail business, but also in the footprint in the healthcare space. And so being able to, for me, it really hit home. I come from a healthcare desert area where I grew up. And so understood the opportunity that we have here in America to really make a connection with so many people across the United States, so many, mothers and daughters and, grandmothers and people who really need access to healthcare. And so about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to leave the pharmacy business and come over to help to develop out what we have as Walmart Health today. And so our focus is cost, convenience, and care. And when you think about the cost piece is just making it affordable in rural America for people to get care. The stories are absolutely incredible around people that are getting pap smears for the first time in 10, 20 years. People coming in for those yearly checkups, getting those cancer screenings, and then referring them out because maybe they did find a lump or something, and then being able to really impact those patients and people's lives. It's absolutely incredible. And then the convenience piece as well is just, 90% of Americans live within 10 miles of a Walmart. And unfortunately, the healthcare space is changing. And some of our amazing hospital systems are going away. in the rural America area, and we have an opportunity to step in and to be able to provide those services. And so beyond primary care, when I think about Walmart Health and our mission, it's a holistic healthcare offering that we really are trying to offer and make it convenient in one place. So we have dental, behavioral health, which is so important at all times, but more than ever right now with the way people losing their jobs and just the COVID and the stress that it's putting on our families and putting on people. It's so important that we have that in our model. And so behavioral health, audiology, primary care, acute care, and wellness classes as well. And so it's really a unique opportunity that we have embarked on over this last year and a half. And it's amazing the impact we're already seeing in our patient populations. And so, moving over from just from offering we've had Pharmacy and Vision Center for many years and being in that space in Walmart into jumping into this space, it's really been so important for us to be able to, make that impact and to see what we can do in the future. So I'm looking forward to discussing that today and answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Amber. And I can say now that I'm not with FDA, I really do applaud Walmart for exactly what they do. It's essential that the products that are developed are able to reach the public. Accessibility, cost makes such a huge difference in terms of the quality of life. And certainly now, having heard from all of you, let's also emphasize the role of women, right? Women as people who very much focus on things like diversity and making decisions for the family across the board, whether it is in the home as caregivers, as policymakers, as researchers. And, one of the things I always say before I start with questions is diversity starts with you. You are the message that you bring. If your team isn't diversified, then don't send a token person to do research. I've looked recently at some major companies on website, and I went directly to their leadership teams, not just their board, but their leadership teams. And actually, they should be embarrassed. I often find they have not one person of color. And if they do, it's one. It's one and only one, if they do, but many have none. I also have looked and found that women, right? We have a big initiative, 20 by 20, because many companies have less than 20% women on their executive board. We can do better, and we must do better. So now I will start by asking questions. And I know that there'll be a number of them in our chat box, but let me just get started with, let's say, Dr. Klein, right? Because we both have been in the arena of sex as a biological variable, and we must always not only include women, but analyze the results, analyze. And so now I'm going to ask you about a question that's never been fully responded to. We now know that women who are pregnant have a different response as it relates to COVID. When those vaccines become available, what will we know?
So when the COVID-19 vaccine is available, we will know nothing about how a pregnant woman would respond, because pregnant women are not getting enrolled in they were not enrolled in the phase 2, and they are currently not being enrolled in the phase 3 trials.
So what will you recommend, doctors, when you have a patient who's pregnant that you know is vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
What happens? What do? What's going to be our message? You see, I don't expect, these are some of our challenges, and we need to always be aware of it. And I try to always make it clear to the public so that they are, fully informed about some of the challenges, that we're having. And this doesn't just relate to COVID and this particular flu shot. It relates to many other products. We're doing better, but clearly we have to do more. And I think the more that our message is out there about the need to include and analyze by sex is something that we need to consistently discuss. I'm very intrigued about the multiple review of multiple screening for cancers. I have a family like all others that's been touched by cancer, and I love the strategy of combining that with other screenings. So can you say a little more about what kinds of cancers you're referring to with this new screening approach?
I would be happy to, yeah. So I can speak a little bit to the clinical trial results that we've recently reported. We had a study that enrolled more than 50 different kinds of cancer. And so that includes the 5 that are traditionally screened for: breast, cervical, colorectal, prostate on an individual patient basis, and lung. But it also, we wanted to develop a really universally applicable cancer test, a single test that could detect really almost anything. And so we purposely enrolled a really broad set of cancer types and, have detection in more than 50 of those cancers, which is a really impressive feat. I'm very excited about the developments that are ongoing at this company. I've said it before, but I'm very honored to work there. So I think our technology is unique in that we really have designed this product so that it should be able to detect almost any type of cancer. And then it will also tell you where in the body we think that cancer is coming from. So if we tell you you have cancer, we can tell you, well, we think it's a lung cancer, or we think it's a breast cancer, or we think it's ovarian cancer. And that can help direct the downstream diagnostic workup to confirm that cancer diagnosis. We do have a study ongoing that is returning results to patients and physicians that will help elucidate what those pathways, what those care pathways look like. And we expect that to read out in the relatively near future.
Thank you. We have a question from Gwen Mays for Lotus. And she's right. Lilly has been identified as being a leader in the area of diversity in clinical trials. And her question is, how can more be done to include mental health endpoints in clinical trials, which disproportionately impact women?
Thank you for the question. I can say in immunology, we know that immunological disorders, they have an increased risk of suicidality and suicidal thoughts. These conditions, vast majority of them are chronic, and vast majority of them have been underserved. So they don't have, there is a hopelessness for these patient categories. So by default, and with actually is Marsha's interest, with FDA's recommendation, the putting the patient outcome reports specifically for health of mental health, it is recommended, and in Lilly we have incorporated in all our clinical trials. But if I want to go to what we can do more beyond what is recommended, it's one thing that I'm very proud that we have implemented. It's for our pediatric trials. So for vast majority of healthcare decision in a household, it's made by a woman. So women are their chief medical officers in their household. So if a child goes to a pediatric trial, the mother has made the decision, and probably the mother is the one that taking the child to the centers, to the schools, call the schools that the child needs to miss the, I don't know, some lessons to go to the laboratory and such. So what we have done is that beyond our clinical trials that is for the child, we have put questions, and we assess the caregiver, and this vast majority, the mother. And we ask them how their experience, these clinical trials, how is their quality of life? during the trial, but also during getting these medications. And that's going beyond what is recommended and really bring along the whole care of the patients. That sometimes is just not the patients, but also the healthcare giver and those families that are helping the patients to reach there.
Mm-hmm. Let me also now ask Amber Bynum about Walmart's approach to assuring that there's a range of products available. My experience is just from observation that unlike some other retail locations, you do just a whole range of things. So you just mentioned dental care. I had no idea Walmart had dental care. I know you can buy eyeglasses.
That's right.
Other things. So why don't you mention some of those?
Sure, Marcia. I'm glad to speak on it. So our target is that time-sensitive, busy family. And so when you think about that particular piece, I'm a mom. I have twin 5-year-olds that just started kindergarten, called them COVID kindergartners, and a third grader. And they also, not only do they need the primary care checkup appointments, but they also need the year, the every 6-month dental appointments, and eyeglasses and checkups from their optometry. So we have a wide range of services. We do full dental care down to ages, if whoever can sit in the chair. So usually around 2-year-olds to is the age that we're starting to care for patients for dental and primary care, audiology, optometry. And so we're seeing those services really busy because we're open 7 days a week. So there's not a lot of services. I work full time. And so rather than having to take off work, I can take my children in on the weekend to see their dentist. And that actually really hits home for a lot of mothers and a lot of single parents. So we're seeing our weekends just full of just regular checkup appointments for kids and for adults as well. And we can take care of the whole family at the same time. So it's really a win for our patients.
That's wonderful. We have a question from Phyllis Greenberger. Dr. Klein, if women have a stronger immune system, why do they suffer disproportionately from autoimmune conditions like lupus?
Oh, thank you, Phyllis. So it's the double-edged sword of having greater immunity. So as a result of that heightened immunity, it turns out that women, especially during our reproductive years, which often are when, for most people, autoimmune disease do present themselves, including lupus, which I think 90% of lupus patients are female. It's the immune response. And so in the case of autoimmune diseases, it's this immune response being mounted against your own self and continuing to maintain these memory responses, so that once you develop this, your immune system keeps remembering having seen your self protein, and that results in the chronicity of autoimmune diseases. We know that hormones, we know that genetics, and we know that environmental factors contribute significantly to that. In addition to autoimmune diseases, women also are significantly more likely to develop inflammatory diseases, including allergy-induced asthma, eczema, if we're talking about our skin, the range of syndromes that are associated with inflammatory bowel syndrome, and some of those related gastrointestinal diseases are all significantly more common. And as a result, and this is where Marcia and some of her work at the FDA becomes so important, as a result of this, there are significantly more women taking medications for these different diseases than are men. And while women are included in the clinical trials, at least here in the United States, there is still not adequate disaggregation and analysis of data by sex to determine if some of those adverse reactions that were brought up earlier in our discussion, why they also occur to a greater extent in females as compared with males.
I have a question from Beth. Amber, I think the direction and therapeutic areas you're addressing and connecting at your facilities is on target. Who are heading up the clinics, and will you be providing access to clinical trials?
Yeah, thank you, Beth, for the question. So we have some of the associates, or some of the people that work on site are Walmart associates, our nurse practitioners, and some of our ancillary staff. And we also partner with local providers, so our physicians and dentists on site, our local providers that help to lead the clinics. I actually run the operations for Walmart Health, and we have also have an amazing clinical partner, Dr. Chini Pularu, who leads our clinical operations. And so we work closely together to lead those initiatives. And so we're in the very beginning. So we've been open. We just had our 1-year anniversary this year. And so we're partnering. Yay, yes. We have cared for a lot of lives this past year. So we're excited to see as we expand all the lives we'll be caring for this next year. And we'll be working behind the scenes and for sure to ensure that we're providing out information so that we're able to help and seeing what we're finding and ensuring that we're providing that out as necessary.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your questions. And we're going to wrap up the panel momentarily. I think we're going to close out. And of course, we have to remember that we are invited to go to tables and to the auction. So this is our next thing. I want to thank the panel. You have been outstanding. We appreciate all the time you've taken to give us these insights and this wonderful information. Thank you.